Well, it's time for us to get started taking a look at Chapter 1. And Chapter 1 in your textbook is titled An Introduction to Taxation Activities and Resources. And if we were to translate that into plain English, what it actually means is the basic beginning stuff we need to know so you can understand the rest of the semester. That's what we're doing. There are 4 things that we're looking at in this chapter that I really want you to pay attention to. Now, understand, you're responsible for the entire chapter. All I'm doing here is giving you some things to help you understand what you're going to learn in your book. We're going to talk about who, why, how, and how much. So let's talk about who first. Who has to pay federal taxes? Well, individuals, actual, living, real people, and what we consider C corporations. And those are businesses that have been given the rights and responsibilities to act as a separate entity. Now, for those of you who went through Introduction to Business or some of the other bookkeeping courses, you might be saying, but wait a second, there's more types of businesses in the world than just C corporations. There are sole proprietorships, partnerships, LLCs, etc. Yes, there are. But every one of those things, anything other than an individual or a C corporation, are what we call flow-through entities. What does that mean? Well, let's talk about a partnership. If you and someone else have a partnership, a business together that you've organized and structured as a partnership, that business is going to earn money, spend money, all that kind of stuff. At the end of the year, hopefully, there's going to be profit. That profit is going to be split between the two of you who are partners. And that profit will flow through to either your individual tax return, or if 2 corporations are partners in this partnership, then it would go to the corporation's tax return. And that works with all of these businesses at the bottom. Individuals and C corporations are for the most part the only entities that pay taxes and have to file tax returns. So that's the who. Let's talk about why. Why do we have to pay taxes? Why do you have to file tax returns? Well, most simply, because it's the law. It's covered by what we call tax law. Well, how does tax law come into being? How is it created? It's created either by being passed by Congress, and there is a section of the federal laws that's called the Internal Revenue Code, so that's where most of it is. It also could be passed by executive action, which means that different departments or areas of the government that are responsible for enforcing Congress's law have the ability to pass executive actions and say that you have to do it. Those could be regulations, they could be rulings. Finally, the third way that it can become tax law is by court decisions. Let's talk a little bit about Internal Revenue Service, because we're going to mention that a lot this semester. The Internal Revenue Service is the division of the federal government that's responsible for interpreting the tax laws that Congress passes, for enforcing those tax laws, and if there's any kind of disagreement about what those tax laws actually say, they go to court and let the courts decide how the law should be interpreted. Now, as we're sitting here talking about why paying taxes, you're probably wondering who this picture is of this man from 100 years ago on the screen right now. This gentleman is Oliver Wendell Holmes. He was a United States Supreme Court Justice about 100 years ago. And from this point forward, in the rest of your life, if you're sitting there at any point in time saying, why do I have to pay taxes? Or if somebody looks at you and says, why do we have to pay taxes? Justice Holmes had a saying or made a statement one time that I really truly think explains this better than anything else. And his statement was, taxes are the price we pay for civilization. Taxes help us provide roads, or schools, or parks, or libraries, or military, emergency, police, ambulance, all those kind of things. So the taxes that we pay into the governments help us live in a civilized society. Now, federal taxes that you pay to the federal government helps fund the federal government. State taxes help fund the state government. Local taxes help fund the local government. But regardless, all of those are being paid to help us live in a more civilized society. Let's now talk about how are taxes structured. There's three basic ways that taxes can be structured. The first one is what we call a proportional tax. It's also referred to as a flat tax. And what that basically says is the percent that you're paying in taxes stays the same, regardless of how much it is that you're being taxed on. And sales tax is a great example of that. The sales tax percentage, the sales tax rate on a $2 candy bar is the same percentage as it is on a $500 computer. Regardless of how much money you're spending or how much money you're earning, the tax rate, the percentage, stays the same. C corporations use this. Remember I said individuals and C corporations are the two types of entities that are responsible for actually paying taxes. We'll get into this quite a bit in a later chapter, but just understand that a flat tax is how C corporations are taxed. The second type of tax structure is what we call regressive, and it's not used in too many different places, and it's almost never used for income tax. This says that the tax rate goes down or even stops as the amounts get higher. One example that we do use this for in the United States, though, is Social Security. And for those of you who've been through payroll courses or have been through business math, we talk about it a little bit in there. Social Security is only taxed on the first, as of right now, $160,200 that you make in a year. So if you are making $500,000 a year, you're only going to pay Social Security on the first $160,000 and change. After that, you don't have to pay this tax anymore.